I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who finds out his wife has been lying right to his face for months. Her name was Jessica, and everything about our relationship seemed fine, at least on the surface. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for about 6 months. I always believed we were headed for a real future, the kind where we'd grow old together, share a house, maybe even have kids. But I started noticing small things that didn't add up. Jessica had become distant. She'd leave her phone on silent all the time, which was odd because she was never really that secretive before. She also started working late during the week more often, claiming it was just stress or a big project at work. I bought her excuses at first. She'd be stressed, sure, I get that. But then I noticed her phone screen lighting up at strange hours, texts from people I didn't recognize, or worse, from her boss, Richard. She'd quickly hide her phone when I'd walk into the room, which was unlike her. She'd always been open about her life, her friends, her job. Now she was secretive, defensive, almost paranoid. The real turning point was when I found her laptop open one night while she was supposed to be out with her friends. I wasn't snooping, just going to grab a glass of water. But the moment I saw her email account on the screen, I froze. There were dozens of emails, but one caught my eye. It was from Richard. The subject line was "Can't wait to see you tonight." My stomach dropped. I scrolled through more emails, and the language in them was intimate, flirty. There were mentions of secret meetings, plans for after hours, and even some explicit talk about their sex life. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just work stress. This was something else. I never thought Jessica, who used to be the kind of girl who would never hurt me like this, would cheat. And yet there it was, clear as day. I printed out some of those emails just to be sure, and my hands shook as I did it. I needed to confront her. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore what I'd found. I kept thinking about how she told me she was exhausted. How? She said she was just working late because of deadlines. And all along she was sneaking around, sleeping with her boss, Richard, a guy who's twice her age and clearly a total sleazebag. The next day I waited until she came home from work. My heart was pounding and I felt like I was about to explode. I had the emails in my pocket, ready to confront her. When she finally walked in, she was all smiles, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing me on the cheek. I looked her straight in the eyes and pulled out the printed emails. Her face froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely stunned. Then her bitchy side kicked in. "Oh, come on, really? You went through my emails?" She snapped, crossing her arms. "That's so invasive. I was just talking to some colleagues, nothing more. You're overreacting." Her voice was bitter, her tone dismissive. I couldn't believe she was lying right to my face again. She tried to brush it off, saying I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into it, that it was just banter at work. But I knew better. I saw her crack in that moment, just a little, enough to make my blood boil. I asked her directly if she was sleeping with Richard. She rolled her eyes and said, "That's ridiculous. He's just my boss. Honestly, you're being so insecure. We're fine." But I didn't believe her, not anymore. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her. I'd loved her, I'd fought for us, and she'd been lying all along. That's when I realized everything was about to change. I couldn't go on pretending I was okay with this. I needed to figure out what to do next, how to handle the storm of emotions crashing inside me. After that confrontation, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying everything I'd seen and heard. I felt like I was in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal hit me hard, harder than I thought it would. Jessica's lies, her dismissiveness, that sneer on her face when I called her out, it all made me realize how deep her deception ran. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I'd been blind to it. I started to dig more into her emails, her phone, her social media. I needed to understand how deep this went, how much she'd hidden. That's when I found out she'd been meeting him outside of work, late at night, sometimes at hotels, sometimes just in quiet restaurants. She'd even told her friends she was stressed and needed a break. But those stories were all lies. I found texts from her that couldn't be anything else, flirty, suggestive, sometimes outright explicit. It was all there. The worst part was realizing she'd been lying about everything, even the little things like how she really felt about me. I felt numb. But I also felt rage building inside me, rage at her, at Richard, at myself. How could I have been so blind? I kept asking myself what I'd done wrong, why she'd chosen Richard over me. Did I miss signals? Was I not enough? The doubts crept in and I hated myself for it. I never imagined I'd be that guy, the one who gets blindsided like this. I thought I knew her, thought we had a future. Turns out I was just fooling myself. I started to think about what I should do next. The first step was clear. I needed to talk to her again, but this time with everything I'd uncovered. I decided I'd give her a chance to explain herself if she even could. I wanted to hear her side, even if I already knew the truth. That night I sat her down again. I was cold, calm, but inside I was seething. "Jessica," I said, voice steady but low, "I've seen the emails. I know about Richard. I know you've been sleeping with him. How long has this been going on?" Her face twisted in frustration and her eyes flashed with anger. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because Richard is successful and I'm just a secretary. You're projecting your insecurities onto me. Honestly, I don't have to explain myself to you." Her words were sharp, defensive, like a shield. That's when I realized I was dealing with someone who didn't even care about the damage she'd done. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt what I saw. I felt my fists clench. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I held back. I told her that I couldn't trust her anymore, that I didn't know what was real and what was a lie. I told her she'd broken whatever little bond we had left. Her reaction: she scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said, "You're overreacting. This is all in your head. You're just angry because I work late sometimes. You're insecure and controlling." That moment I saw her for what she was: bitchy, manipulative, and utterly selfish. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the ceiling, wondering how she could be so callous, so indifferent to the pain she caused me. I kept thinking about all the plans we made, all the dreams I had of us building a life. Now it all felt shattered. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach so many times I couldn't breathe. I started questioning everything: myself, my worth, whether I even knew who she was. The shock of it all was overwhelming, and I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. The betrayal had to be faced, one way or another. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew my world had just fallen apart. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't focus on work, on anything really. My mind kept circling back to the emails, the hotel meetings, her dismissive attitude. Every time I saw her, she looked at me like I was the problem, like I was overreacting, like I was just some insecure guy who couldn't handle a little asterisk fun at work. That made me angrier. How could she be so callous, so manipulative? She always knew how to twist things around to make herself look like the victim. I started to gather evidence, just in case. I wasn't planning to jump to a conclusion without solid proof. I went through her phone again, found texts she'd deleted but were still recoverable. There were even voice messages she forgot to delete, full of flirting and promises to meet up. I kept all of it. I knew someday I'd need to confront her with everything, and I wanted to be prepared. Honestly, I felt like I was preparing for a war. I couldn't just walk away now, not without knowing I had everything squared away. Then, one afternoon, I decided to follow her. I needed to see where she was going, who she was with. I followed her from her office to a nearby hotel. She went inside with Richard. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I was going to throw up. I watched her walk through the lobby, her head held high, like she didn't have a care in the world. That's when it hit me: she didn't care about me. She didn't care that I was hurting, that I knew her secret. All she cared about was her own lies, her own little world where she was the victim. I finally decided I'd had enough. I couldn't keep pretending I was fine when I was dying inside. I called her at work that same night. My voice was cold, but I kept it steady. I told her I knew everything about her, Richard, the hotel, the emails. I told her I was done pretending, done being a fool who thought I could fix this. I asked her what she wanted to do, whether she wanted to keep lying or finally admit the truth. Her reaction: she laughed. A nasty, bitter laugh that made my skin crawl. "You really think I'm gonna sit here and spill my guts to you? You're so pathetic. You don't get to tell me what to do. I don't owe you anything anymore." She was so bitchy, so dismissive, like I was nothing to her. That's when I realized her mind was made up. She'd already decided her game. She had no intention of stopping, no intention of telling me the full truth. She just wanted to keep her secret, keep her lies intact. and I felt a surge of rage and heartbreak all at once. In that moment, I decided I'd do something I never thought I'd do. I was going to take back control. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty. But now I saw that she was just using those words as weapons. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after all this. I knew I had to confront her face to face, so I set a trap. I told her I was coming over that night to talk, but what I was really planning was to catch her in the act if she was still sneaking around. I knew I needed concrete proof, not just words or emails. I was tired of her gaslighting me, tired of feeling like I didn't matter. When she answered the door that evening, she looked surprised to see me. Her eyes flicked with that familiar bitchy glare. I didn't say much at first. I just looked at her, took everything in. I knew then that I couldn't go on living in this lie in her lie. I had to face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I was about to find out just how far Jessica would go to keep her secret buried, and I was ready to finally confront her, to decide my next move. That night, I walked into her apartment with a heavy weight on my chest. My hands were trembling, but I kept my face composed. Jessica was already there, nervously packing, trying to act like everything was normal. Her bitchy smirk was still there, but I could see the flicker of fear behind her eyes. I didn't say a word at first. I just looked around, took in the scene, and then pulled out the printouts and recordings I had collected. "Jessica," I started, voice low but steady, "I know about Richard. I know about the hotel. I know about the emails, the texts, everything." Her face twisted into that familiar sneer, like she thought she could just brush it off. "Oh, seriously? You're still obsessing over some stupid emails? Grow up," she spat, but I pressed on. I handed her the printed emails and I played the voice messages I'd saved. Her face paled a little, then turned red with anger. "You've been lying to me this whole time," I said. "All that stress, all those late nights at work, you've been sleeping with your boss. How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, trying to look dismissive. "It's none of your business," she snapped. "You're just jealous, insecure, and desperate to control me." That was her usual line, her go-to whenever she was caught, but I saw through it now. This wasn't just some fling, this was her life for months. The worst part was how she kept denying everything, even when the evidence was right in front of her. I watched her try to gaslight me, tell me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid. But I was. I'd seen enough, heard enough to know the truth. She was sleeping with her boss, and she didn't even feel guilty about it. Instead, she was furious that I'd found out. That's when I realized how deeply she'd lied to me, how much she'd been using me as a cover. I felt the rage boiling inside. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. All those nights I stayed up waiting for her, all the little signs I ignored. She'd been with him, cheating on me, and I never saw it coming. I thought she loved me. I thought we had something real. Turns out I was just a fool. A naive fool who believed in someone who didn't give a damn about me. When I finally got tired of her denials, I told her I was done. Done with her lies, her games, her manipulations. I told her she could keep her secret, keep her affair, but I was walking away. That I deserved better than a wife who cheated on me with her boss and then dared to try and blame me for being insecure. Her face twisted into a mask of anger yet again. "You're overreacting," she hissed. "You're just insecure because you're not good enough for me. I don't need you anymore." At that moment, I knew I'd reached a point of no return. I was tired of feeling like I was the bad guy. Discovering the truth. I was tired of her blaming me when she was the one betraying everything we'd ever built. I told her I was leaving, that I couldn't stay with someone who lied to my face and fucked her boss behind my back. She screamed through things, called me jealous, paranoid, all the usual bullshit. But I didn't care anymore. I had everything I needed: proof, clarity, and the resolve to walk away. As I left her apartment that night, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. Relief because the nightmare was finally over, and I no longer had to live with her lies. But despair because I'd lost someone I once loved, someone I thought was my future. I had to remind myself that I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who genuinely cared. I'd always believed in loyalty, but now I knew some people, Jessica, were just selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for their own selfish needs. And I'd be damned if I ever let someone do that to me again. The days after I left her place felt like walking through fog. I was numb, really. Part of me wanted to believe I Was overreacting, that maybe I'd misjudged her, but the mountain of evidence was too clear. Every time I thought about her with Richard, the image burned into my mind and anger bubbled up again. I felt betrayed on a level that's hard to put into words. It wasn't just about the cheating. It was about the lies, the manipulation, her dismissiveness, her treating me like I was nothing. I started to pull back from everyone, friends, family, anyone who knew about the situation. I needed time alone to process what had happened, but it wasn't easy. Everywhere I went, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk, the way she'd look at Richard like he was the only thing that mattered. That image haunted me. I felt stupid for trusting her, for believing she was different. My heart felt like it had been torn out, and I was just walking around trying to breathe. What really hit me hardest was the realization that I'd been a fool. I kept asking myself, how could I have missed all the signs? Was I that blind? Was I so desperate to see a future with her that I ignored the red flags? The answer was yes. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my future, and she'd just thrown it all away with her lies and her sex with Richard. That realization stung more than anything. It made me question whether I'd ever really known her. I started to think about what I should do now. I knew I had to move on, but how? I was angry, hurt, humiliated. I felt like I'd been played for a fool. I had to distance myself from her, from the whole situation, and focus on healing. That's when I decided I needed to cut contact completely. No more texts, no more calls, no more checking her social media. I couldn't let myself fall back into that trap of hoping she'd come back or that she'd suddenly tell the truth. It was over. But even with that decision made, I knew I couldn't erase what had happened overnight. The betrayal would stay with me for a long time. I kept replaying the moments, the emails, the hotel, her sneering face when I confronted her. Each time I'd feel that deep ache, that sense that my trust had been shattered irreparably. I realized that I'd have to rebuild my sense of self. Piece by piece, I had to remind myself that I deserve someone who's honest, loyal, and respectful, someone who wouldn't lie and cheat behind my back. The worst part was the truth about Jessica's personality. She was manipulative, bitchy, and selfish. She had no problem destroying what we had just so she could indulge her own needs. I used to think she was ambitious, driven, maybe a little high maintenance. Turns out she was just self-absorbed and willing to betray anyone for her own pleasure. That wasn't the woman I thought I knew. That realization made it easier to let go, but it also left a bitter taste in my mouth. Now I'm in a place where I'm trying to pick up the pieces. It's not easy, it's a long road. I don't exactly know what the future holds, but I know I won't be the guy who gets played like that again. I've learned a lot about trust, about recognizing red flags early, and most importantly, about valuing myself enough to walk away from someone who doesn't respect me. I don't regret finding out the truth, even if it hurts like hell. Honestly, I feel a sense of relief for finally seeing her, for who she really is, and for having the strength to walk away. To anyone else out there who's going through something similar, here's what I've learned. Trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags. And if someone shows you they're capable of lying and cheating, don't make excuses for them. You deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. Don't settle for less. It hurts now, but in the long run, it's better to face the truth and move forward than to stay in a lie. That's what I'm trying to remind myself every day. The healing process has been a roller coaster. Some days I wake up feeling like I've turned a corner, stronger, more determined to move on. Other days, I get hit with waves of anger and sadness that knock me down. But through it all, I've learned to focus on myself. I started going to therapy just to make sense of everything and figure out how to trust myself again. It's not easy, but it's necessary. I realized that I've spent so much time trying to fix someone who clearly didn't want to be fixed, someone who was always about her own needs, her own pleasure, her own lies. The biggest lesson for me was about boundaries and self-respect. I used to think that love was enough to fix everything, but now I see that love also has to be based on honesty and mutual respect. Without those, it's just a house built on shaky ground. I'm not bitter about losing her, because honestly, I see now that I was better off without someone who would betray me so completely. I've started rebuilding my confidence, rediscovering the things I care about, and learning to trust again, first myself, then others. Sometimes I wonder what I would tell my younger self, the guy who thought he'd found the one. I'd tell him to pay more attention to the signs, to listen to his instincts, and never ignore the red flags. I'd tell him that no matter how much you love someone, if they're lying behind your back, it's not worth it. No one is worth sacrificing your self-respect. Because in the end, the only person you truly have is yourself. And if you lose that, everything else is meaningless. Looking back, I don't regret uncovering the truth. It was painful, but it set me free. I don't dwell on what I lost anymore. I focus on what I've gained. Clarity, strength, a sense of what I will and won't accept in a relationship. I've learned the importance of being with someone who values honesty over deception, loyalty over betrayal. And I've come to accept that sometimes the only way to truly find yourself is by going through the storm and coming out the other side. Now I'm just taking it day by day, rebuilding my life, my confidence, and my trust in myself. I still get angry sometimes, still feel the sting of her betrayal, but I also know that I have the power to choose my future, to learn from what happened, and to never let someone else's lies define me. Because at the end of the day, I know my worth, and that's what matters most.